Thank you once again for coming. This week we have yet another very interesting speaker. I'm very pleased to have been able to say that we've got Ian Maxwell as our speaker today. Ian has many affiliations. I'm not going to try and go through every single one of them, but his background is he's a PhD in physical chemistry from Sydney University. We were just sharing reminiscences of when I first arrived here 24 years ago. We were actually located in the same room over in the transit building just at the end of the road here. So Ian's been sort of around for nearly as long as I have. He's got much grey hair, that's not fair. He has worked, when he finished his PhD, went and worked for Memtech and James Hardie, two very well-known Australian companies, in a range of roles in R&D and operations. He then came back and was involved as business development manager for the Redfern group of companies in the late 90s, and finished up running one of those companies, Redfern Polymer Optics, for a number of years before stepping back into other roles, including as a venture capitalist with Allen Buckridge. Ian is now the CEO of a company called BT Imaging, which is a spin-off from University of New South Wales, and that's is part of what he'll be talking about today. I'll leave the rest all up to him, because he's got many, many things to say. I'm sure it's going to be a really interesting talk.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello everybody. I'll keep it pretty formal. Am I in the video screen? Yeah, good. First thing I noticed is I'm in physics at Sydney Uni, and there is one female in the room. What's going on, guys? It's very typical, nothing's changed. Okay, so I just wanted to, what I didn't want to do is talk about myself and what I'm doing, because that's probably what everybody does, and that's actually pretty boring. I will just expand on what I'm doing just in the context of what I'm going to say. So I'm variably a venture capitalist. I'm a general partner of the Allen Buckridge Emerging Technology Funds, which is an early stage technology fund here in Australia. We've invested in 14 companies out of universities in Australia. That's been going on for quite a while now. We're just wrapping up that fund. I'm the CEO of one of those companies we invested in, which is, as Simon said, a spin out from New South Wales University in the solar energy space. This company, it's a photonics technology, essentially photoluminescence imaging of silicon. It's used for production of silicon wafers and cells. In fact, that image there is one of our tools. So all our customers are in China, so all the people who make solar panels and solar cells and solar wafers in China, which is where they're all made today, in Taiwan, buy equipment from us. We're the leading vendor of the inspection tools that we sell. So we're number one in the world in that space. It's a sort of a hidden way of doing solar energy technology in Australia. So rather than trying to create a whole new solar energy technology, which is a bit pointless to be honest, silicon's one a battle, it's all over. We're providing technology to the people who make products. I'm also a professor at RMIT. I'm doing a sort of an interesting incubator model down, running an incubator model down there, which I may or may not talk about later on. And I do all that through my own consulting company, so I do all sorts of things for other companies on the side. So the pros people I was going to talk about today, I was trying to think what might be interesting to a whole bunch of people working in what looks like a fairly applied area of research. Firstly, what sort of technologies worth commercialising in 2012? I was going to mention why it's hard to do startups out of Australian universities, having done a few and being involved in funding a few, why it's so difficult. Having said that, why it's worth doing anyway. Startups need a lot of fun, so I'll talk about that and how to go about doing that. So I'll just talk about those 4 points primarily. So the first thing about what technologies are worth commercialising in 2012. It's very difficult to find out because there's so much activity in the world in various areas of technology. I love this map. It's, I think, the London Underground, very mapped onto technology and human nature. It just goes to show that the whole point there is it's very confusing. Just about every academic has their pet technology, every venture capitalist have areas of interest, and most of them aren't worth commercialising. So really, the big trick as an investor is figuring out what's worth investing in. And this is a very interesting slide. I have a pointer here. That's right. I've looked about it. This is the NASDAQ, which is use a big the elements here. This is the NASDAQ index, which is essentially the best correlation to technology, value of technologies in the world, essentially. If you've got a good technology company, typically you list it on NASDAQ, so it's a very good proxy for the value of technology in the world. Starting in 1974, it's a nice, smooth, sort of gradual increase. And then we get to the silly season, around about 95, 96 it started, and that was the start of the dot-com era. Somewhere around about here, the photonics, fibre optics thing kicked in as well, because that was supplying the bandwidth required to drive the dot-com rubbish. And you see the value of technology went through the roof. It wasn't worth that, just that people decided it was going to be so big they'd pay a lot of money for technologies. But of course, reality hit around about here, and since 2001 really, it's sort of gone up a little bit, down a little bit, as you know, up a little bit, and it's supposed to go down a little bit again, I'd say. Probably go back down to here or lower in the next year or so, as Europe unwinds on us. So that's the inherent value of technology over the last 30, 40 years, whatever it is. Now here's a very interesting slide. I've actually matched the date, so this is 1990, so it matches there, and this is 2008, so it matches the NASDAQ here. What this slide is the green bars, how much money was committed to venture capital in the US each year. These numbers here, and the blue line here is the 5-year performance of those very same venture capital funds that are invested in these green bars. What you can see is quite an orderly increase of money invested in venture capital with a return which, when it gets to 20%, venture capital is worth doing. It's a quite risky investment, so if you don't get to 20%, it's not really worth investing in venture capital. This is across the whole portfolio, not one company, I must say. So in this period here, venture capital wasn't returning very good returns. Still positive, but not really worth the risk. This is less risky things you can invest in and get the same return. Here it started looking really good. Of course, as the NASDAQ index went up, a lot of people started paying a lot of money for technologies and technology companies, so the returns started looking spectacular, averaging up almost 50% by the peak of the dot-com fibre optics boom. And of course, because the returns were higher, people started putting more money into venture capital. And look what happened. Ooh. But the really odd thing, the returns flopped at the end of the dot-com bubble, but the amount of money going to venture capital did not. People just kept investing with very high numbers into the venture capital industry, despite the fact that the returns actually went negative, we're destroying not just value, but money here. So there's this odd disconnect between what's really happening and how much money people are putting into venture capital. So at the moment, really we're negative. So the value of the technology, which is venture capital back, is zero, or less than zero. You're destroying value by investing in venture capital on average. Of course there are exceptions, but exceptions define the rules. So the true answer is, there are no technologies that are commercialised in 2012. Because if you go into this industry, get venture capital money, the mean says you'll destroy value. So essentially you're saying, I'm not going to regress to the mean, therefore I'm different. That's called a gambler. So that is the underlying scenarios we're looking at. So there are still two good reasons to do startups in 2012. One is to have fun, because I'll talk about that in more detail. Another is, this one, help save the people on the planet. You often hear people say help save the planet. I don't think the planet's at risk, I just think the people on the planet are at risk. So if we want to save the people on the planet, maybe technology is the answer. I love that picture. So this is a recent solar energy trade show in China, so I took this photo. Just, the Chinese don't really care about solar energy, they just care about making money. It's great. Having fun. So I personally believe, having worked in the university sector, I was an academic in the Netherlands, and I did a PhD here as well, of course. I've worked in the corporate sector, I've worked in venture capital, and I've worked in startups as a CEO about 7 times now. I think technology startups are the most fun working environment, personally. Everybody might not share that view, but I think they are. I don't worry too much about the money, by the way. If it comes, it's great. It's a badge of honour because you've been successful, but that's not what it's all about. It's more about just having fun, to be honest. So, if you're going into a company, here's the choices. You've either got the startup world or the corporate world. Which one would you want? Honestly, I've worked in corporations, it's painful. There's a mindset that thinks that, you know, working in a cubicle world is great, but it's really not. It's horrible. However, if you want to have fun in a startup, you may as well make money as well. So, the most financially lucrative technology today is obviously internet-related technologies. Everything else, anything which is not just code, everything which has got hardware in it, in any form whatsoever, takes too long and takes too much money. And in this year, 2012, the return prospects of investing in anything with hardware in it just don't warrant the risk, to be honest. And that's borne out by the actual figures as well. So if you want to do startups to have fun, the trick is to stick to code. Anything which is not code, so as soon as you start picking up anything physical, I think you've done the wrong thing, unfortunately. And I know I'm talking to physicists, so that's probably not what you want to hear, but that's the truth of it. This is a great quote. This is from a couple of days ago in VentureBeat. VentureBeat is currently the source of all gossip and crap in Silicon Valley. This is a company that just got invested in called Dropcam. That's not really hardware, as you and I understand complex hardware. All this is a little wireless camera. But look at the quote. Dropcam. The company has just secured $12 million in second-round funding, actually from Menlo Park Ventures, sort of values. Hardware-based startups are a bit of an anomaly in Silicon Valley. So it was always big news when a company like Dropcam attracts investor attention. So for those of you who don't spend time in Silicon Valley like I do all the time, since over the last decade, hardware companies aren't getting invested in. Literally, they are a rarity, and when they are invested in, people set up and make topics like this. It's all internet, it's all code, whole Silicon Valley. It's great code. It's true. So, unless of course it's a bike, if you've got a bike technology, come and talk to me. I'll be interested in investing in bike technologies. Again, because it's fun, okay? If you think about bikes, there really isn't been a lot of new technology apart from new materials for a long, long time. So, and they are very popular, so come and see. So what is the internet? The latest bit of jargon running around Silicon Valley is it's called the reimagination of everything. It used to be disintermediation, and now it's reimagination. Primarily it's in mobile, it's driving the growth of the internet. It's anywhere, anyhow computing. Here's an interesting chart. This is Indian internet traffic as a percentage. And the yellow line is the percentage of internet traffic which is mobile. The blue line is the desktop traffic. So you can see this year mobile data traffic has just overtaken desktop-based data traffic in India, and the rest of the world's following India. India is probably the most progressed on this market, mainly because their old copper system wasn't that great anyway. Of course, in real terms, the amount of traffic is going up for both desktop and mobile. That just goes to show how much internet traffic is moving towards the mobile platforms. And here's another one about another slide on mobile apps and advertising, looking at the rate of increase in revenue in the US for mobile apps and mobile advertising. Obviously, very high compound growth rate there. That's the sort of thing that gets investors excited because high growth means typically high multiples on the value of a company. So early stage companies typically valued on a multiple of revenues. So if you get your company to 10 or 20 million revenues, you're worth 10 times that, $100, $200 million typically. So high growth means high multiples. That's what people want to see when they're investing. The problem is you invest in 2012, and by the time the company's ready to sell, compound growth rate's gone to some small number maybe, and it's not worth as much. That's one of the risks you take as an investor. The internet technologies of value fall into two real broad categories. Firstly, the things that consumers pay for example, apps, content and games, physical goods. eBay is an example of that, just buying stuff via an internet channel. Services and systems, replacing what used to do by mail or phone on the internet, more sophisticated services, and obviously payment systems that uphold all those commerce channels. But businesses, which are more interesting in a way, pay for obviously advertising, which is the big money spinner on the internet at the moment. Businesses will buy businesses which just have a lot of eyeballs. For example, Instagram was bought by Facebook recently for about $1 billion. It didn't have any revenue, it's just a lot of people using it. So they'll pay for eyeballs, they'll pay for code that does stuff. If you're developing a startup, they'll buy code. Or systems, so this is an interesting one. As to where hardware does sneak into the whole internet model. For example, down at RMIT at the moment, we're looking at a technology, or we're actually developing it, which is essentially eyeball tracking. So we're now using the eyeball, the camera on the phone, to track the eye movement, so you can open windows, apps and things, actually control the actual phone operating system with your eyes. So again, there's a hardware and software side to it, because the camera conditions have to be controlled. So there is a hardware element to that one. Obviously, if you're buying a business, you'll buy revenues and profits, and also ideas and patterns. Patterns are becoming an interesting business, which I'll talk about in a second. So the reimagination of everything, which is otherwise known as disintermediation, really falls into, well, it falls into a lot of categories, but I'll give you 3 examples. Firstly, on content. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know yet, by the way. We used to buy CDs, for those of you old enough, buy records before that, and tapes. Somewhere along the line, iTunes popped up and everybody started buying their music through iTunes and equivalent channels. And then the smart people started not buying it through the internet, through Pirate Bay, because why would you pay for something when you can get it for free? And now, the disintermediation, which is happening through the torrent world, is forcing the artists to go direct to the consumers. So Artist Direct is one of the sites where you can buy music directly from a band or a musician, and cut out all the middlemen in the record companies, which don't deserve to be fed anyway. So disintermediation is happening. I think ultimately buying content as a concept is going to go away entirely. I think it's all going to live in the cloud. You'll have access rights to what you want to listen to, when you want to listen to it. There's no point in actually owning your own copies. It's a bit retarded, really. But that'll take time. In terms of services, looking for a job, for example, we used to go to the newspaper to look for a job. And then internet popped up and people were doing job searches using Google. And obviously LinkedIn now is one of the major ways people look for employment, either on the demand or supply side. People looking for people, target people, or people that people know by internet that they're out of a job or looking for a job. What's happening there, which is really interesting at the moment, is there are starting to pop up industry-specific HR companies, which are very tailored towards what's going on in those industries. And these companies are essentially spinning out of the LinkedIn model and using LinkedIn data, trying to get hooks into LinkedIn. I expect LinkedIn to try and aggregate these or something like that. In terms of connecting, back in the day, we actually used to connect only by meeting people, talking. Then of course we got email on the phone, the mobile phone, so you could connect to a lot more people without actually having to meet them. And of course, bloody Facebook pops up and everybody's got 500 friends, they're actually connected to 500 people on a regular basis, they call that connecting. Where does this lead us to? Well, I think it's the matrix basically, we're all just living in a little glass tube, but obviously there's going to be a progression where we get more and more sophisticated social networking models, and they're starting to splinter as well. So Facebook's a one model fits everybody. Now we're seeing all sorts of niche Facebook style or social networking businesses popping up. And Silicon Valley must have, I don't know, maybe at least 1,000 social networking startups at the moment, all trying to target a niche. What's the one I saw the other day? Fitocracy. So if you want to get fit, lose weight, there's a social networking called Fitocracy. The idea is to share set up your milestones, and share them with the network of people using photography. So it gives you a sort of a sense of shame if you don't meet your goals, because all these people are watching, apparently. Yeah, it just goes on and on. If you want to have fun and you want to make money too, there's a second model, which is even easier again than code, and that's patents. Patents are becoming a very interesting, tradable commodity. Even 10 years ago, patents were still primarily being used to protect monopolies, or short-term monopolies, which is what their role is. I mean, the whole idea of a patent is this: we invented technology, we apply for a patent, we get, say, a 20-year monopoly, so our competitors can't use that technology. But in return, we reveal all the details about technology. And the reason they were originally invented was to ensure that the rate of technology development in a whole society was increased. And there's a great example of that back in their days in England, in the Chamberlains, which were family medical practitioners, and I think it was in the 1700s. They applied to the English patent system at the time, and they invented forceps to used in delivering babies in the breech position. They were asked for a patent and were denied, and their response to that was to keep the forceps as a family secret, and they didn't go into common use for another 100 years. So you can see that had they got a patent, they would have only been a monopoly for 20 years. So the world was not so better off for that answer to their patent request. That's a patent troll on the right. So what's happening now is that people are starting to trade in patents as a very liquid commodity. So whereas once they were used by businesses to protect the technology being copied by their competitors, now they're being used in a variety of very interesting ways. So people are buying patents or inventing on very good result. So to be successful in venture capital requires an internal rate of return, compound interest if you will, of around 20% because of the risk of the investment type category. So if you had a great idea, would you go to the Australian venture capital industry to get your money? Because progression is a mean. You're very likely to get minus 9.1%. That is, you won't be successful financially, even if you talk to the best venture capitalists. On average, they just get their money back. So not a good place to go for money. It's even worse in the American. Australian venture capital industry is substantially worse than the American industry because, remember that first slide? The Americans occasionally made money. The Australians have never made money as an industry. So if you've got a great idea, it would be crazy to take money off the Australian venture capital industry because they've got a history of destroying value, and they'll destroy your value as well. That's true. So can you fault the logic? Yeah. So why is it worth doing startups anyway? This is the more positive part of the talk. Firstly, I think you learn more doing some venture capital startups, not just startups in general, whether in venture capital funded or otherwise, but any other activity because the scope of activity is so broad. You've got to do all the business stuff, you've got to do all the technology stuff, the product stuff, marketing, all the people stuff, which is even more interesting. Such a range of different types of people, keeping them all happy is always a challenge. It's fun because you're not in a constrained environment. The only thing that constrains you is money, normal capital. Very large scope of activity. Very high quality of people, typically attracted to startups. And also the polymaths, so there's people who do different things, get rewarded in this industry. You can do some good if you pick the right sort of technology to work on. And ultimately, it is the biggest challenge, I think, in terms of human endeavour in many ways. I call it business without, it's like climbing without ropes. Essentially, you're out there on the cliff, you've got no safety net. So, you know, you can fall, but you know you haven't got any ropes, so you've got to be aware of it. So how to go about doing a startup? First lesson is to learn at somebody else's startup. Do the apprenticeship on somebody else's time and dollar. I see people go out straight from university to a startup and miserable failure. They get very unhappy and very stressed. It's always smart to go and join somebody else's startup, learn all the lessons on somebody else at their risk, and then you're so much better prepared to do your own. And when you do pick somebody else's startup, check out the quality of their CEO. If they're very experienced, that's great. And networking is the other important thing. It's a full-time job, networking with investors and all sorts of partners and anybody else. It's just networking. In terms of experience, if you're working in a startup, if you're going to do a startup, you need to know the industry very, very well. You can't, I've never ever seen, or I don't think I have, an outsider come in with an idea in a specific industry which is successful. The good idea is always coming from someone who's worked in an industry and knows that industry very well. They know the problems, they know the opportunities. Time and time again, when we're investing our fund into the university sector in Australia, or ideas coming out of the university sector, you get some guy who's never been in the industry, fibre optics, say, he's got this new thing, and they think it's fantastic. And the only reason they think it's fantastic is they don't know why it's not fantastic. Because it does one thing really well, but does all these other things it doesn't address industry really needs. So learning in an industry and working in an industry for some time is a must-have. Geography is a problem. I've said it's really hard to do it here in Australia for a whole bunch of reasons. So you can go to Stanford or MIT, spin out of there, it's a lot easier. Or you can do it here if you're a glutton for punishment. Industries of choice, well I've talked about internet and patents, but obviously there are other areas that people go and do startups in. But the important thing is that it has to be high growth. High growth gives high enterprise value. Capital intensive is a bad thing, because the trouble with capital intensive industries where you need money and real equipment, you've got to get more money off investors. It takes longer to get the technology to work. And there's always a higher risk by the time you get there that the market's gone away, the market's matured and the multiples are lower, the longer it takes to finish the company, as the company is essentially a product, you're building it to sell it, the longer it takes to finish it, the higher risk we have in time, and time is the killer of all startups because the conditions change between when you start and when you finish. You've got to get to revenues really, really quickly because raising money is a lot easier than you've got revenues. And you have to be quite close to your investors, all the partners and potential acquirers of the business. If you're an ocean away, like the Pacific Ocean, it makes life a lot harder. Fail fast and learn well. So fail fast means don't spend 3 or 4 or 5 years on a bad idea, which is just wasting your life. You make up one of them. So the quicker you can find out your technology's done, the better. So you need to test your ideas before the market does, and learn well from all your mistakes because you'll make lots of them. Know your investors well because they're your biggest risk in any startup. You'd be surprised how irrational and stupid most investors are. Start young. Start young is important because the older you get, you end up with a mortgage, kids, whatever. The ability to take risks in terms of personal cash flow become quite inhibiting. So when you're younger, it's easier to live on a slow and orderly rate and take risks. The rest, there's a million other things you've got to know to do a startup, but really you can learn them on the job and have a good mentor or two. And just the final point, risk taking is fun. Yeah.
Thank you, Ian. Any questions? Yeah, Mike.
Sort of two-part question. How sustainable do you think is the model of like just investing into sort of code essentially instead of hardware? Like who's going to actually do the new technology which is powering all this? And the second question maybe, do you think sort of crowdsourcing funding is the way to go for hardware funding? Because I think the highest funded project on Kickstarter is a hardware project.
Yep, good questions, both of them. So, the reason hardware technologies aren't worth investing in today is NASDAQ's back. The problem is, and this curve here particularly, there's a huge overhang of technologies which have been developed. Essentially, this last decade, we've got an oversupply of technology. And essentially, it's like an inventory of technology which we have to work through. So I think the hardware situation will get better by the end of this decade, where we've literally taken the good stuff out of the last decade of investment in technologies. And the supply and demand situation of technology will improve. I just think at the moment, it's not a very good time for hardware investment in hardware technologies, because we're still working through this decade of technologies which we haven't deployed yet, one reason or another. In terms of crowdsourcing, yeah, the jury's out on that because it's so new, crowdsourcing. So crowdsourcing, for those of you who don't know it, it's essentially a social network investment model. So instead of going to professional investors like venture capitalists, there's a whole bunch of sites that have popped up which essentially take a micro investment of mums-and-pups, shareholder, anybody who wants to put money in, you can put $1 in or 50 or 100 or 1,000 or more. And so it's basically a meeting place for companies and small investors, effectively. I think it's a very interesting model. I think you need to have a whole life cycle or two of investments via that strategy to see how it actually works, because there will be serious problems. The venture capital industry took really 30 or 40 years to iron out all the bugs in their model, in terms of structuring the model. So I think that the whole crowdsourcing investment strategy will take a decade or two to get to a point where it's very effective. I think there'll be some serious issues. But yeah, it's worth trying. It's worth trying.
You just like to throw one at me.
Yep.
The BTI is a hardware
Yep.
counter-cyclical to everything you said today.
That's true.
Why?
You know what's the last one I did? I was sort of determined to get a hardware company away. they are so hard. So it's the best of the sort of hardware technologies because it's capital equipment. So you don't have to manufacture anything, it's assembled by hand, very high margin, 56% margins, very low requirements for inventory, we build on demand. So the real problem with that business is the time it takes to get revenue. So in terms of the capital intensiveness, that's not in that business, but it's the time to get product ready. So we overcame that by having a product ready 6 months after we spent out the technology for years. We couldn't get a production line tool ready in that time because we didn't have all the specifications and requirements of 80 position wasn't ready. So what we did, we built an all-purpose lab tool, which was Army knife for the photovoltaic labs. That was our cash generator. So we sort of circumvented the problems. But when the market's gone south, like it has, a solar market, for those of you who don't know, at the moment has flattened off. So 3 years ago, most of the production of solar wafer cells and panels was in Europe, Germany primarily. Over the last 3 or 4 years, the Chinese have totally absorbed all the production of the solar market. They've done that by putting in a lot of very, very cheap capacity. They've got free money off the Chinese development banks. They've built huge factories and priced the Europeans out of the market. But in doing so, they put in massive overcapacity. So literally they're about 3 times the capacity of the world actually needs at the moment. What that means is they're not buying any capital equipment for the next year or so at least. So our market's got very flat. We've got a very high cost base because we're a capital equipment market. So there's another good reason not to do it. We'll survive, we'll be fine. But it is a good reason not to do it, honestly. When things don't go as planned and markets don't always go as planned, you're far more exposed to downturns by being capital intensive.
Could you comment on biotechnologies in general? Because I would have thought that .com crash was sort of a result of information, right?
Yeah.
But biotechnologies tend to be quite hardware kind of technologies. So there seems to be a shift away from information. It's growing quite well, doesn't require that much capital, as you say.
Yep.
But there's a shift towards biotechnologies in general. So, I mean, this may break that model to some extent down the track, I think.
Biotech's an interesting place. I mean, in terms of investment market, it's its own little world. And it's broken up into a whole bunch of things. You've got things like drug discovery, you've got medical devices, diagnostics. There's a whole range of different technologies under the so-called biotech banner. Interestingly, drug discovery's gone out of favour in investment. Well, the reason for that is there's literally a 10-15 year cycle from chemical discovery or efficacy, some discovery efficacy of chemical to all the clinical trial steps to release, right?
But that's also being absorbed by the large companies anyway. I mean, they take that risk, and most of the chemical discoveries are made by, the big pharmaceuticals. So it's not really any.
Well, actually, no, that's interesting. The actual they take them to market, but historically the initial discovery has been done by smaller companies, which they gobble up.
Right.
Okay, and that's the venture model in biotech, is to put your bet on a bunch of little companies. And there is quite a lot in Australia of drug discovery startups. So it's really interesting what they do is they, someone at some ANU and the medical schools, pretty famous for this, they'll come up with some molecule which has some efficacy in antiviral or something. They'll spin it out as a company, and then they'll list it on the market pretty early. And the reason they list it is no professional investors interested in the price. They want to raise it, so they get all these top investors to put their silly money into these chemicals. A lot of people lose money along the way. Even if the chemical's successful, it gets all the way through the market. A lot of investors lose their shirt. So that's why a lot of investors won't touch it. It's said that if you want to be a venture capitalist in the biotech space, this is pre-GFC. The GFC has really made it a lot harder. Actually, it's gone down substantially investment in this area. you needed $1 million fund just to make enough portfolio bets to cover the risk. And if you had less than $1 million in drug discovery, you didn't have enough bets to cover the risk. But only one of them is going to get through, basically, of your portfolio of 20 or 30 investments. What's happened more recently, though, is that the rate of molecules getting through to production has dropped substantially. So we're up against the wall of diminishing returns of the drugs to get through. That's for a number of reasons. Obviously, it's getting harder to find chemicals which don't have side effects and always up the bad. The regulatory hurdles are going up, and a lot of the easy hits have been taken. So there's really struggling to find new drugs now. So the whole investment space there is actually quite diminished, and investors are pulling away from it.
But I think there's new models there with regards to medicine generally, particularly in the areas of in vitro modelling. So you don't have to go off and do clinical trials that take years and years and years. You can just do a lot of this through computer modelling, or actually in vitro, taking tissue samples of people and then doing the drug testing outside the body and then honing in on chemicals. So to me it sounds quite exciting. I know we're just going through an evolution, aren't we, with regards to how we do medicine generally. And things have been moving very, very quickly over the last decade or so. So I just sort of feel that I'm confident, personally, that there's a lot more to be done in that area. We're just going through a phase.
I think you just touched on something which is quite interesting. I mean, there is another model for investment, which is selling the shovels in the gold rush. So rather than digging for gold, you build the tools which enable the people to dig for gold. So building all the technologies which enable these researchers to do this sort of work can be lucrative, even if the industry as a whole is not successful. It's a silly bargain to pay for new modelling software, and you make money even if they don't or something off you. So I think selling shovels in a gold rush is always a good idea.
Okay, I think we are just time now, please, to getting close. Thank you, Jordan, once again, taking you in for a very interesting talk. Okay, in 2 weeks' time, we have Mark England from Tycom Submarine, formerly Redford Pilots, going to talk about some of the near-death experiences of the past decade.
Take his head or what?
The atomic boom bust.
Okay, pieces are on.